On the 20th of June 2012, Microsoft told everyone who had just bought a Windows phone that their phone would never run the next version. 3 years later, it wrote off $7.6 billion. The two facts are the same fact, and the distance between them is the whole story. 10 weeks earlier, Nokia had launched the Lumia 900 on AT&T for $99. It was the flagship of the biggest bet in Nokia's history, the phone the entire company had reorganized itself around, and AT&T had put real marketing money behind it. 73 days after it went on sale, Microsoft announced that it was already a dead end. Not slow, not unsupported eventually. Structurally incapable of ever running the operating system that was coming in 4 months. And the reason it could not is genuinely interesting because it was not laziness or malice. It was a decision that, on the engineering merits, was almost certainly correct. Windows Phone 7 shipped in late 2010, and it was good. That part surprises people who never used one. The interface was genuinely original, live tiles instead of a grid of icons, a typographic style nobody else was doing, and it was fast on cheap hardware. Underneath, though, it ran on Windows CE, an old embedded kernel Microsoft had been shipping in various forms since the 90s. CE was small and it worked, but it was a dead end of its own. It was not the kernel that ran Windows on desktops. It was not where Microsoft's engineers or drivers or security work lived, and it was never going to scale into a modern platform. So for Windows Phone 8, Microsoft did the sensible thing. It threw away the foundation and rebuilt the phone on the Windows NT kernel, the same core that runs desktop Windows. Shared drivers, shared security model, shared graphics stack. On paper, this is exactly what you would want. In practice, it meant something that cannot be softened. You cannot swap a kernel with a software update. The foundation of the operating system is not the sort of thing that downloads overnight. So every Windows phone that existed on the 20th of June 2012 was, from that moment, permanently stuck. Microsoft offered a consolation update called Windows Phone 7.8, which backported the new start screen and left the actual platform behind. And the specific victim here matters, because it was not some budget handset. It was the Lumia 900, Nokia's flagship, 3 months old, the centerpiece of a company-wide pivot that Nokia had bet its survival on. Imagine you are the person who bought that phone in April. Imagine you are the AT&T rep who sold it. Imagine, worse, you are a developer who spent that spring building for the platform. Nobody in that chain did anything wrong, and all of them just learned the same lesson at the same time. This thing is not stable ground. And that lesson is the one that actually killed Windows Phone, though it took another 7 years to finish. Because here's where the usual explanation goes wrong. The usual explanation is the app gap. Windows Phone did not have Instagram, or it got a worse version late, or the bank app was missing so people did not buy it, so developers did not build for it, so people did not buy it. That is real, and it is the loop every third-place platform dies in. But it treats developers as if they are counting users, and that is not actually the question a developer asks. The question a developer asks is, if I spend 3 months on this, will my work still run in 3 years? That is a question about the future, not the present. A small platform that is clearly stable is a reasonable bet because small can grow. A platform that periodically replaces its own foundation is not a bet at all, because the size of the audience is irrelevant if the ground moves. Microsoft answered that question out loud in the worst possible way and then kept answering it. If you find this useful, subscribe. This channel takes apart one dead company a week, and the cause is almost always structural rather than personal, because the kernel swap was not the only reset. Over the following years, Microsoft moved the app model again toward a new universal app framework meant to unify phone, desktop, and tablet. Another migration, another set of instructions telling developers that the thing they had built against was now the old way. Each of these decisions was individually defensible. The NT kernel really was the better foundation. A unified app model really is a nice idea. But strategy is not a list of individually defensible decisions. Every reset restarts the ecosystem clock at 0, and an ecosystem is precisely the thing that cannot be rushed. because it is made of other people's time. Microsoft kept spending a currency it did not own, the accumulated work of everyone who had already built for the platform, and it spent it 3 times. So here is the reframe. Windows Phone did not lose because it had too few users. It lost because it never became somewhere you could safely stand. Third place is survivable. Plenty of platforms live in third place for decades. What is not survivable is being third place and unpredictable, because the only rational move for anyone deciding whether to invest is to wait and see, and a platform that everyone is waiting on is functionally indistinguishable from one nobody wants. The tragedy is that the individual engineering calls were mostly right. If you had shown a Microsoft architect in 2011 the choice between staying on a dying embedded kernel forever or moving to NT is the correct answer, and it is not close. The mistake was not the decision. It was failing to count what the decision cost people outside the building and then making the same kind of decision again before the last bill had been paid. The financial ending is brutal and short. Microsoft announced it was buying Nokia's devices business in September of 2013 and closed the deal in April of 2014 for $7.2 billion. 3 months after closing, it announced a restructuring that eliminated up to 18,000 positions. And on the 8th of July 2015, 15 months after buying the company, Microsoft wrote off $7.6 billion and cut another 7,800 jobs. Read those 2 numbers next to each other. It wrote off more than it paid. The entire acquisition, plus change, declared worthless inside of 5 quarters. Windows Phone limped on in name for a few more years, and support finally ended in 2019, but the write-off is the real headstone. Microsoft did not run out of money, or engineers, or distribution. It had all 3 in quantities its competitors could only envy. It ran out of the one thing it could not buy, which was anyone's willingness to build on ground it had already moved twice. There is a company that took this bet even harder than Microsoft did and lost more. Nokia was the largest phone manufacturer on Earth, and it abandoned its own operating system to go all in on Windows Phone, the platform you just watched strand its flagship in 73 days. If you want to see what it looks like when a company burns its own working software to climb aboard someone else's and what the engineering actually looked like inside Symbian before they did it, that story is on the channel now, and the link is on screen.